Aethermancer is the second game currently in development by Moirai Games, creators of the other excellent monster-taming RPG, Monster Sanctuary. Aethermancer combines monster-taming and roguelite elements to create a wonderful, bite-sized RPG experience. Much like other roguelites though, Aethermancer is hard at first. There's a huge difficulty curve in the beginning, but with a little bit of knowledge and determination, not only will you start to win runs, you'll win runs consistently, and this guide will help you get there. To make the video a bit easier to navigate, I've broken it up into chapters. First, we'll go over the general gameplay loop. Then we'll dive into the anatomy of a monster. After that, we'll talk about the turn-based battle mechanics, followed by some of the random events you can encounter on your runs. Finally, we'll close the guide with some tips and tricks from yours truly. With that all said, let's dive into the basic makeup of a run. Each run is going to be structured the same. First, you select a monster, then you enter the pilgrimage path and select your second monster. Then you fight, level up, choose your skills, choose the next stage and your third monster, and then you rinse and repeat until it is done. After a run ends, you invest in some meta progression back at the landing, and you can start a new run. The structure is simple, but like most roguelites, it's the choices that make it interesting. And what is more interesting of a choice for a game like this than choosing your monster? In order to have any idea of what a monster is or can do, we have to know what makes a monster. Each monster is wildly different, but there are whoa, what the heck? Mr. Dubois. There are fundamental building blocks to each design. First off, we have signature traits, which are typically a strong gameplay guiding mechanic that makes the monster tick. Usually, playing into this passive will increase a monster's usefulness. Every monster also starts with 2 skills that guide the player towards the monster's preferred playstyle. Over here, we have a monster's elements, which every monster has 2 of them. These depict which ether they're inclined towards, as well as the ether types they'll randomly generate at the start of each turn and each time they use a basic attack. Next, we have types. Each monster has 3 of these, showing what kinds of skills they'll typically give you when leveling up. Finally, we have perks. These are stat-increasing passives the monster will always have. You will gain more as you level up each monster's worthiness. Worthiness persists through runs, thus making it a type of meta progression. Let's go over each of these points quickly using Totzelwurm as an example. Totzel's signature trait is Primeval Blight. Every time this monster crits, apply poison. This monster gains 3% crit chance for every stack of poison on the enemy. Their 2 innate actions are Toxic Slash and Fire Claws, the former of which deals 2 earth hits of 4 damage and applies 2 poison to the enemy, while Fire Claws deals 4 hits of 2 damage. We'll talk about this distinction when we discuss the combat mechanics. Their elements are earth and fire. At the start of each turn, Totzel will generate either 1 earth ether or 1 fire ether. Each time Totzel uses a basic attack, they will generate 1 earth ether and 1 fire ether. Also, most of the skills they can learn will involve fire and or earth ether. There are 5 elements in this game: fire, earth, water, wind, and wild. Totzel is partial to these 3 types: critical, regeneration, and poison. On level up, you'll usually see these kinds of skills pop up. These are merely inclinations though. Totzel will usually be offered skills like these, but they can also get skills that interact with other types as well. There are tons more types in the game. Catch more monsters and see them all. Finally, Totzel's perk is crit chance plus 25%, innately giving them a massive bonus to apply crits, making them a hugely formidable offensive threat. These are all the things we need to keep in mind as we move into the first turn of combat. We're just going to let the first turn play out. Okay, so a lot of stuff just happened, and there are some UI elements that need explaining. Let's go over each step sequentially. First, generate ether. Both allies and enemies each generate 1 ether to their respective pools shown at the top. The ether generated is determined by the monster's elements. You can see here that Totzel generated 1 earth ether, while Ooze generated 1 water ether. Another ether is generated by the Aethermancer, but this one is decided by looking at all of the elements our monsters can use. In this case, our monsters can utilize fire, earth, and water, but not wind. So, the Aethermancer generated 1 more earth ether, but there was no chance for them to generate a wind ether. Ether are resources a monster can consume to perform actions. These are denoted by the circles next to the action description. If you lack the ether for an action, it will be grayed out, and you cannot use it, like Fireclaws is here. For this turn, we utilized Toxic Slash with both Totzel and Ooze, subtracting 2 Earth Ether. In Aethermancer, you always go first, followed by the opponent. You can command your monsters in any order, pushing up or down to switch between who you want to attack with. It may seem innocuous at first, but turn order becomes a key part in strategizing as your monster's repertoire grow more complex. The square above a monster's head depicts what action it's about to take. There's an icon that depicts the skill, a colored border outlining the skill icon, a few shapes extending off the icon's sides, and the ether needed to perform that action. The icon is practically unknowable without experiencing it a bunch. You can look at a monster's info in order to determine what ability it is specifically. The icon's colored border represent whether it's a support action or an attack action. Blue means support and red means attack. The arrow shapes extending from the icon clue you into which monsters are being targeted. The circles off to the side show how much ether is needed for the action. Much like your own monsters, the enemies also use ether to fuel their actions. This is relevant for things like Purge and Steal, but we'll get into that later. Finally, some monsters have special icons on the bottom right corner of their action. There are very few of these, but as of now, they're shorthand for describing actions gained through a monster's signature trait. Taking all of this in mind, we can describe the nature of each enemy's action. Orthrus will be performing an AoE support action for his team, and will cost 2 water and 1 wind ether. Volpertinker wants to attack Totzel with an earth action, gained through its signature trait, and it costs 1 earth ether. These little diamonds next to the enemy health bars represents their poise. The number shows how many hits are needed, and the diamond's color represents what type of element will deal damage to it. This is also represented in text via tooltip when selecting which monster will receive your Toxic Slash. You'll be able to tell an action's element by looking at its required ether. Toxic Slash deals earth hits, while Fireclaws deals fire hits. There are also a lot of actions that mix 2 elements, which results in hits of both types. Critical hits will each result in reducing the enemy's poise by 2, if they hit their weakness. Wild hits will deal damage to poise no matter what. Here's where we can bring up the importance of the attack formula. It's super simple. Left number is number of hits, right number is damage. Fireclaws deals the same damage as Toxic Slash, but it costs more ether because 4 hits can pretty much knock out any monster's poise if they're weak to fire, especially if you land some crits. There are also quite a few passives that can potentially do some nasty stuff per hit. Plus, modifiers like power increases the damage of each hit. Generally, the more hits you have, the more chances you get to get sick and nasty. In this case, Volpertinker's poise is at 2 health, and its weakness is earth. We want to make sure Volpertinker doesn't see the light of day ever again. Well, Toxic Slash is perfect for the job. We select Volpertinker and wham! Stagger. Reducing a monster's poise to 0 will trigger this chunky effect. Stagger is a very powerful mechanic that has a few bonuses. First, it stuns the monster, causing them to skip their turn. Second, they take 50% increased damage from hits, including the hit that staggered them. And finally, you can capture them with a blank memento. Want to increase your roster of cool monsters to choose from? Grab yourself a blank memento, stagger your unobtained monster of choice, and use the Aethermancer's blank memento to capture the monster. This will add the monster's soul to your inventory, so they'll be available at each altar as long as you have the soul. You can only capture a monster once. They'll permanently be added to the pool of monsters that can be produced by the altars at the start of each area. If you want to unlock them for use as your starting monster, you'll have to buy them off of Lily in the hub area, which we'll talk about later. Stagger is very important, but you need to be a little cautious about it. One turn after being staggered, a monster will have this symbol next to them. This is a recover action, another action that the monster will use on their turn in addition to their intent. Each monster has a different recover action, and you will inevitably see all of them at some point. By the way, we also saw the words Void Blitz at the top of the screen, yeah? That's basically a preemptive strike, but we'll explain that later. After Totzel's turn, we see an icon appear below Volpertinger's health bar. Any icons below an enemy's health bar represent buffs or debuffs. For your monsters, you can see them to the right of their health bar. Buffs are beneficial, while debuffs usually are a cause for concern. There are way too many to go over now, but I'll highlight a few we'll see in this run. For buffs, Power increases the damage of each of this monster's hits by 1. Regeneration heals this monster by X amount at the start of the turn, then reduce regeneration by 1. Sidekick. This monster will follow up another ally's attack action with a smaller attack of their own, then reduce Sidekick by 1. For debuffs, Poison. At the start of the turn, deal an earth hit of X amount of damage, then reduce poison by 1. Burn. Whenever this monster uses ether or is interrupted, deal a fire hit of X damage. Weakness. The damage of the next X hits from this monster are reduced to 1. Each hit reduces weakness by 1. Paying attention to these modifiers is a huge part of this game's strategy. Each time one of your monsters is hit by an enemy action, they may gain this pink affliction called Corruption. This is a major debuff that persists outside of battle, and there are limited methods to remove it. It's a simple debuff to understand. Each stack of Corruption reduces that monster's starting hit points by 1. Note, this is starting hit points and not maximum hit points. It's a strict and daunting mechanic that functions as this game's danger mechanic, an aspect of the game that threatens to increase the game's sense of danger. It's not unbeatable though. There are a bunch of ways to mitigate it. First is healing. Remember, Corruption affects starting HP. During battle, you can heal beyond the starting HP up to that monster's max HP. This makes some healers like Mandragora especially powerful. Shields are like temporary HP in D&D. They're temporary hit points that take damage first. A monster will only receive Corruption if their health bar takes damage, so shielding is a solid, proactive method to reduce Corruption. Third is interrupting. Removing the enemy's ether that's necessary for their action, either through purging or stealing, will result in that action being interrupted. The enemy's action is then replaced by a basic attack. While this doesn't fully get rid of the enemy's turn, it will vastly reduce their damage, potentially to the point where it won't inflict Corruption. Finally, there's staggering. Obviously, removing the enemy's action entirely will plummet their damage output. Phew. After all of that, we can finish out this battle and reach the reward screen. We're almost done. The first screen that appears shows how much worthiness your participating monsters gained. The amount of worthiness is determined by their contribution to the fight. Damage, healing, shielding, turns passed, ether purged. There are tons of ways to gain worthiness. Once a monster fills their worthiness bar, they'll advance to the next level of worthiness, which rewards them with a new perk. Again, this is meta progression, so this monster will always have this perk for the rest of the game. Naturally, your monsters will eventually become really powerful because of this, so the game naturally gets easier. The next screen is the experience screen. At base, each battle rewards 1 segment of experience. This segmented bar shows how many battles are needed to advance to the next level. Boss monsters reward 2 segments. Finally, the juiciest part of the game, leveling up. When a monster levels up, you will be presented 3 options to choose from. These are 3 skills randomly retrieved from a massive pool formed by several different factors. They're determined mainly through a monster's types and elements, but they might also get the option of maverick skills, composite skills that have 2 types, which can pull from this monster's types and an allied monster's types. While that is all that's needed to explain this bit, this is probably the most fun part of the game for me. Reading what the skills do and making connections between monsters is super satisfying, and it can lead to some crazy outcomes. Now we're going to talk about events. This is a bit of a broad umbrella term for some of the more random elements outside of battle. We'll split it into two categories, NPCs and interactives. You'll encounter some other adventurers on your travels. These include Sir Tiberian, Lily, Alioth, and Myrn. Sir Tiberian will either offer you an equipment for free or trade in your equipment for a rarer one. Equipment are items with passive effects that you can have your monsters hold. They can seriously increase your monster's power, so don't ignore them. Each monster can only hold one equipment, and you cannot swap them around or remove them. I guess they just get really attached to them or something? Anyways, equipping a new item to a monster who is already equipped will scrap the current item for gold and equip the new item in its place. Each equipment type will always do one particular thing at base. A staff, for example, will always increase a monster's hits by 1. They can also come with affixes, which are just more passives. There are tiers of rarity for equipment ranging from common to epic. The more epic in equipment, the more passives and power they'll have. They can also come with rare affixes, adding an extra bit of power on top. Lily can do one of 3 things: reroll a trait, reroll an action, or replace a perk. Lily can be the most volatile of the bunch. Make sure you understand the difference between traits and actions before you select your monster. I was in a situation where I mixed up the two, and I wound up severely crippling my team by only being offered rerolls on extremely important traits. You cannot back out once you select which monster to perform the reroll on, so be wary. Alioth is a lot like Tiberian, but he'll offer artifacts instead of equipment. Artifacts are basically actions the Aethermancer can use. Remember the blank mementos we use to capture staggered monsters? Those are essentially artifacts. These work differently than a monster's action. The Aethermancer can only use them a certain number of times per biome, so that's like the whole of Pilgrimage Path or Forbidden Fortress at this moment. Boy howdy though, their power more than makes up for it. I recommend only using them when you need to, as they can get you out of some terrible binds. Finally, we have Myrn. Myrn is a chef that can give experience to your monsters in exchange for corruption. Alternatively, they can cleanse corruption from your monsters. Now we're going to talk about interactives. There are quite a few interactive locations in the game. For the most part, these are randomly generated. I'll go over a few here. Void Meteorite. This adds an element to a monster's basic attack based on one of their 2 elements, and also increases how much ether a basic attack generates. Void Orbs. Plundering these will reward you with bodacious and bountiful booty. Soul Altar. Spend a monster soul to give your team a powerful boon for 2 battles. These can pretty much guarantee a victory over an upcoming boss. Finally, we're going to talk about paths. At the end of a stage, you'll happen upon the crossroad of branching paths. Selecting one of the portals will whisk you away to the next stage, but what's the difference between these paths? Etched into the ground at the foot of each portal is an icon. These tell you what event the next stage will offer. A sword and shield will bring you to Sir Tiberian. A witch hat will bring you to Lily. An Aethermancer marking will give you Alioth. Scales will route you to the merchant. An orb will spawn an epic loot crate. Coins will litter the next map with more gold sources. A rolling pin will bring you to Myrn, and this one denotes an ether spring. These confer boons on your party. They're pretty powerful, so I would make sure to grab them. The second ether spring will let you generate an additional ether every turn, and that can enable some powerful runs. Finally, there's the question mark, which is just a random event among the list. Personally, I tend to value the ether springs pretty heavily, while also grabbing coins when I can afford to. Sir Tiberian and Myrn can give pretty big bonuses, and Lily can be super impactful, provided she does what you want. Generally, I'll avoid the merchant until the final stage boss, but he can offer blank mementos that will help with expanding your posse. Once a run is ended, you'll warp back to the landing. Here you can spend ether crystals, which are these things, to give your future runs some decent bonuses. Currently, there are 3 NPCs you can spend ether at. Gustavo upgrades various things, but he has quite a few bonuses for the merchant campgrounds between biomes. items. Lily offers soul bonds. Purchasing a monster off of Lily will add them to your starter monster selection pool. In order to have these monsters show up here, you have to first capture them in a run. In order to do that, you must have a blank memento. Then you have to stagger the monster of choice. Then you use the Aethermancer's turn to use the blank memento, and voila, new monster. Finally, come back here to Lily in order to purchase the monster forever. Alioth offers some nice stuff like the skill reroll and worthiness upgrades. Personally, Lily is the top priority for me. However, if you want to upgrade your monsters quickly, grabbing Alioth's worthiness upgrade is also a great idea. Skill rerolls give you more options when leveling up. Honestly, I'd leave Gustavo's stuff for last. It's a bit cruel in my opinion they put him out in front while he has the weakest boons. Finally, we're on to the tips section. These are various tips I found helped me get more consistent at the game. Number 1, always kill Totzel. Totzelwurm is one of the first monsters you see in the game, but that doesn't mean it's a pushover. Genuinely, this guy can chunk your monsters for half of their HP and slap them with some nasty corruption early on. They're pretty frail though, so targeting them with all of your might will usually be enough to take them down. This extends beyond just Totzel. Target prioritization is one of the key tactics you need to learn to get better at the game. Obviously though, this is something you'll only figure out by playing the game more. Here's a few monsters that can ruin your day. Number 1, Totzelwurm through their heavy damage and poison. Number 2, Orthrus, which quickly gets out of hand when it's in a team. Number 3, Mephisto, very quickly gets out of hand, especially in debuff-centric comps. And number 4, Wormling, which will usually use Fire Ritual and then Fire Bolt for 50 damage the following turn. There are some monsters you can usually just ignore. I usually prioritize Ooze, Shambler, and Domovoy last. Number 2, ailments can affect poise. Burn, poison, and terror are even more powerful than they initially lead on. Burn deals a fire hit, poison deals an earth hit, and terror is a wild hit. Burn and poison can nab you that final poise damage needed to stagger the opponent. Number 3, choose monsters with similar types. Sometimes building a team can be tough. Try teaming up with monsters that share common types. For example, Totzelwurm and Ooze are both poison types, so they naturally work well with each other. If you don't know what something does, activate the tooltips. You can activate tooltips by pressing whatever button is displayed down here. This will explain highlighted terms to assist in understanding what each phrase means. Number 5, likewise, if you don't know what a monster does, read up. You can check your enemy's stats by opening the menu mid-battle and leaping over to them. This is really important information that's needed to get better. Number 6, prioritize Ether Springs. Their boons may seem small, but they add up over time. The first boon can really make a huge impact. Number 7, try having at least one of each elemental attack. Stagger is so important to the survival in a run. Being capable of disabling any threat is a good contingency to have, especially since Star Spawn can brick you if you don't have the means to stagger it. Number 8, take a second to think about turn order. Taking a breath and slowing down will help you concentrate on optimal plays. The order your monster's attack can drastically affect your damage output and survivability, so always play it cool. Number 9, any equipment is better than no equipment. Try to get a piece of equipment on all of your monsters. They're free boosts in power, so why not? Number 10, you should full clear. Clearing every monster group in a stage from the beginning to the end will likely put your monsters at level 5 or 6 before the final boss. This way, you'll have 3 powerful traits and 2 extra actions to choose from. Finally, number 11, Void Blitz from a vantage point as often as you can. Void Blitz occurs when you press the button prompt before a monster catches sight of you. This gives you a preemptive strike, which reduces the poise of one monster of your choice. If you use it from higher ground than the monsters, you get rid of 1 more poise. Who you choose should be determined by your own set of target prioritization methods. Always remember though, always kill Totzel. Welp, that does it for me. Aethermancer is a really fun game, so I really hope this guide helps you out with getting into it. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot them at me down in the comment section below. If you liked the video, go ahead and give it one of those. Here on this channel, I review anime, and I plan on reviewing video games and having some chill gameplay commentary and much, much more, so hey, if you're looking for a YouTuber who still doesn't know what exactly they want to do with their channel, consider subscribing. This has been Slipippy, thanks for watching.